to the Thought Snob Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. Ladies, this episode is for you. You'll walk away with all the career advice you need to advance in your line of work. Here's how this episode came about. The Thought Snob Podcast is about helping people align their energy with what they want and make conscious creation work for them. My intention is to leave my listeners in better shape than they were when they tuned in. And that is my North Star. My intention guides me towards the guest I have on the show. That's why the topics are so incredibly diverse, but they're all interconnected. So if you aren't happy at work, what are the chances your energy is in the correct alignment? Slim to none. This is a common problem. The good news is there are solutions, and I brought a career expert to the show to talk about those solutions. Today's guest is not only someone I absolutely adore, but she's also a savvy businesswoman and a strong advocate for women's success in business. Her name is Jennifer Swope, and I invited her to join me in a conversation about how women can rise to the top in any career if they choose to do so. Jennifer is perfect for this topic because she's at the top of the hierarchy in a male-dominated field, and you'll learn the strategies that got her there in just a moment. Here's a little bit about Jennifer. She's a third-generation owner and chief operating officer of the Swope Family of Dealerships. The Swope family has owned and operated the auto group since opening its first location in Elizabethtown, Kentucky in 1952. In 2022, Jennifer was named one of the Automotive News 40 Under 40 for her outstanding leadership and significant business achievements. She prides herself on leading by always putting people first. I am so appreciative of Jennifer taking time out of her outlandishly busy schedule to appear on the podcast and help me communicate information that improves women's lives. If you love the Thought Snob Podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you for being here with me. So we are going to talk about career advice and focuses on women, although I think what comes out of this conversation will benefit anybody. But just talk about women in the workplace. And I wanted to bring you in mainly because you are a female who has climbed her way to the top of the hierarchy in a male-dominated industry, which is the automotive freaking industry.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a family who had commercial industrial construction companies. And I could not have moved up in those businesses no matter what. There were no room for women in those top tier positions. So I'd just like to kind of kick off, and why don't you just talk about how you got there? And I know that's a really broad question, but it's just going to lead to all sorts of things.
Yeah. I mean, I could probably talk to hours about how I got there. But the first thing that I would probably say is that I was really blessed that my dad didn't raise me to believe that I couldn't. And I think that does start at a young age if you're lucky. Otherwise, you have to retrain yourself, right? But I was never raised to think that I wasn't capable of doing anything. And I started working in the dealerships when I was 14. So as soon as I could legally work, I wanted to go get a job at PacSun at the mall. And I think mom and dad wanted to travel and wanted me to come with them.
Right. So that was your first job?
It was at the dealership. I actually worked for Uncle Bob. I worked for Bob Swope Ford because I said, fine, I'll work at the dealerships, but I'm not working for dad, so I'll work for my uncle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of I started when I was 14. And I always had a job because that's the other thing that was instilled in me was work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just have money because your family has money. You don't just get handed a credit card and say, here's a car and go do whatever you want.
Right.
Did I get handed a credit card? Absolutely. It was to help my mom get groceries. Did I get a car? I did. I was lucky, but I had to pay for the gas to put in it, and I had to pay for my makeup, and I had to pay for my clothes. And if I was going to do that, I was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
Yeah.
So at 14, you start at the dealership. And what did you do?
I was a nighttime receptionist.
Nice.
Yes. So nighttime, I'd get off school around 3:30, and mom would take me over to the store, and I would work for a couple hours. I think they closed at 7, so I'd work until 6 or 7. So it's just a few hours here and there, but it was in the service department. So my first experience in the dealership world was in parts and service.
Mm-hmm.
So I was cashiering tickets. I was doing counter sales. I was answering phones. So I was doing a little bit of cashiering, a lot of phone calls, and I don't know. I still kind of smile when I think about a dealership because there's not a whole other lot of other environments like it. You have a lot of businesses going on at once. You've got the sales department, you've got the parts department, you've got the service department, you've got admin, you've got accounting. So there are so many different functions happening under one roof and so many different purposes that everybody serves. But the way that that community is formed and that family is formed, I just at a young age I got a bug for it.
Mm-hmm. There is a certain energy about a car dealership.
Yeah.
There really is.
And they're all a little different,
They are.
but they have the heartstrings are there.
Mm-hmm. That is true. That is very true. And one of the things that you said just a minute ago that stands out with me and is so connected with my work and hits home with who I am and how I was raised was you had a man who was your dad who actually created a mindset early on of success,
Yeah. So
not failure, not incapability.
I've had a lot of women that I've been in a lot of mentoring circles in the car business. And people will say, you need a mentor, a male mentor, because it is a male, but you need a male advocate.
Right.
And any business that is male dominated that you find yourself in, you need the advocate. You don't need the mentor. You don't need the coach. You don't need the cheerleader. You almost need the person saying, no, this person is capable too. And to put yourself in a position to have the advocate, that's what you have to find. That's what you have to work for. Shouldn't have to, but
Right. Right. Well, and when your mindset is shaped at such a young age, and it does position you for success because you feel like that you're capable of getting what you want. And when I sit down to write this book, Thought Snob, I mean, this is where this whole concept of snob comes from, because snob stands for see new objective beliefs. When I was growing up, I was told repeatedly, like anytime that I would mention the lifestyle that I wanted or the things that I wanted, and the people around me, if they thought that was unattainable for me, then they called me a stuck up snob. They said that I felt like I was better than them and that I was trying to get above my raising. And I believed that. And I believed that I had to settle for everything that I didn't want. And that's what I did. And the first 30 years of my life were pretty miserable with some pretty shitty jobs that I didn't like because I thought I wasn't capable of getting what I wanted. Like the lifestyle that I wanted was for other people, not for me. It's like God blesses some people but doesn't bless others, is what I was taught to believe. And that's absolutely ridiculous. But what it did was it shaped my subconscious beliefs. And when I started to take inventory of the beliefs about myself, I realized they weren't true and they were based on the subjective opinions of others. And when I got down, to the core of it, I had to start looking at the facts. And that's how I broke the pattern with going from not really succeeding, really. Of course, I want to get into how we define success because everybody defines it differently, but not really succeeding by my definition until after I was 30. And you're 38.
37 for another month.
For a whole other month. That's right. I stand corrected on that. But you're there, like you're right there. And I don't even feel like that I got started really until after 30. And it was because of the mindset. And I have to point that out to the people who are listening because it means everything.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here realizing that we went through very similar struggles, just polar opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got called a snob or, or stuck up for wanting these things for yourself.
Yeah.
Imagine growing up really not even recognizing that you have, not understanding what you have, right? And people calling you princess or snob or stuck up because of perception of the way they think you live, whether they think you're being raised, and then having to spend your entire upbringing and then career overcoming that. Because then when you step into that family business, then you can walk into the store. And in the car business, we have this thing called PhDs, right? It's called Papa Had a Dealership. So when you go into generational car dealers and dealership worlds, we have PhDs and we all giggle about it. And they get a bad name, right? The PhD is usually the kid. And usually I know a lot of I know a lot of multi-generational dealers who work just as hard as I do, if not harder. But we get the stigma that you lived the pampered life. Because generation one, my grandpa, he and his brother laid the foundation and they worked their tails off and they created something out of nothing, right? Generation two, my dad, my uncles, they come in and they saw the success of the first generation and then they built from there, right? So by the time you get to generation three, theoretically, what can happen pretty easily is that we were raised with a silver spoon, right? We're the snob, we're the princess, we don't know what a day's work looks like.
Oh, right. No, it's a lot of judgment.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
So then to almost work, I don't think it's a bad thing to work to overcome that because I think you can either live into it and be that,
Right.
or you can have that work ethic and push to prove yourself, but you almost have to push 2 times harder because people around you will believe that you are where you are because of your name or who you are in a generational family business.
Oh, yeah.
So I do find myself in my 30s. Interestingly enough, I've had success, right? I've got a fun alphabet soup title, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been a 40 under 40 for Automotive News, but I feel like I finally have caught my stride as well. So even though I've had success, and I might have seemed to have done it early, I'm more comfortable. I mean, there's so much imposter syndrome that happens even when you're a child of it.
Oh my God, yeah. The imposter syndrome is real, and I think that it happens to all of us. It's happened to me 1,000 times.
Absolutely.
Even and it's odd, it's not really predictable and it's kinda sneaky because I can be feeling very, very confident about something and then fall I'll tell you what causes it with me usually. And this has actually just dawned on me. I've just had a realization. It's when I compare myself to somebody else in my field that I think is further ahead of the game than I am.
Yeah.
And then those thoughts start to creep in. But I mean, I always interrupt them and I get past it. I've never let it interfere with anything that I have done or tried to do. But a lot of women do let it get the best of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from subconscious beliefs.
I have sat in more meetings and more, whether it be an OEM meeting, a field meeting for a brand that we represent, whether it be a meeting of people who are in the same industry roundtabling and discussing ideas. I've been in more meetings where I'm not only the youngest person in the room, but the only woman.
Mhm.
Only woman.
Woo!
And you talk about imposter syndrome. I mean, you talk about being in your early 30s, um, and being scared to speak up. You know that you have something to give. You know you have something, but you're almost scared because it's like, well, I also have questions and I don't understand everything. And if I don't understand it and they know that I don't understand it, then I don't belong here. And to get past that, no, everybody in this room, I don't care if they're over 50, male, female, it doesn't matter. Everybody has questions because we can't know everything. So to even get to the point where I felt comfortable to ask a question in some of those settings it can be terrifying.
Yeah, I know that feeling because most of the jobs that I had and I will tell you that the best the best bosses that I have ever had have been men. That's just the truth. But I have been in those rooms before and been really, really timid because I just instinctively felt like they didn't take me seriously,
Mhm.
and I really had to work hard to get past that. And it was very, very challenging.
There's a mindset shift that when you have the confidence that you take yourself seriously, you're confident in what you're doing, there is a mindset shift where you give that up, right? And I do feel like I've had those moments where I'm like, I I might have the most important idea in the room, and I'm gonna say it. And you do have to grow into that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's challenging, and you have to get
It
past it.
is. It is. And I have always, not so much now, but in the past, I mean, I'm self employed now and I have been self employed since 2015. But before that, I was always in situations where I was working with people who had, doctorate degrees. I was working with people who were older than me,
Mhm.
in top tier positions. Really, I mean, I worked with people in the last employer that I had. I mean, I worked with people who were invited to the White House for dinner and played a role in policy. I mean, governmental policies. And these were really, really, really intelligent people. And I always made the mistake of thinking that they knew more than me. And it would usually turn out something would happen. The universe works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways. It would always turn out that I would see they don't know more than me.
They
And
need your perspective.
yes,
You get lost in who in that role and that
mhm,
level and that vibration of the brain
right.
that you're just as important in that room because you have a perspective that they can't have.
Right. And you're exactly right. And you're exactly right. And I wish that everybody could have that realization about themselves because even though they may not have a doctorate degree, and this is using this as an example, that does not mean that they are not as smart as the person that does. And that does not mean that what they have to say isn't valuable
Mhm.
as the person who does. And that's a mistake that I've made in the past that I think is kind of goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And two, along those lines, and I wanted to ask you this, it's about how you define success too, because most people, just overarching, immediately they start thinking about the tangible. They start thinking about money and the watches and the cars and the homes. And to me, it's a whole lot more than that. So, like, do you define success now like you did maybe years ago? Has it changed? What is your how do you define success for yourself?
So for me now, today, my success is, I think, defined by impact. Am I making an impact for my employees? Am I making an impact for my customers? Am I making an impact for my community? Because with our grandpa used to say something along the lines of, with great success comes great responsibility. So yeah, success can look like dollars and it can look like, it can look like a certain income level. But, and maybe those were my goals when I was in my 20s. Yes, I absolutely hit some income levels that I thought I was successful because I hit that goal. That's important too. But you do get to a level where you've achieved success. Now, what do you do with it? Because that's so important. Um, you don't want to be the person, success can be lonely, right? You don't want to
Mhm.
be the person sitting in their big house on a hill all by themselves because they got there and now they're holding it all to themselves, right?
Right.
So how do you take that success and make impact in your community? How do you take that success and feed it back to your employees or your tribe, who whatever that is? How do I take my success and share it with the world because that's impact? And that's how I define success at this point. Um, but yeah, I think when you are getting started, those initial goals are just as important. Like when I was trying to hit, my first six-figure income, man, that was a goal, and that felt successful when I got there that first time,
Oh,
right?
same.
It felt very successful.
Mhm.
It does grow and it does change.
Yeah, I had it in my head that when I made um, six figures a year, that I was successful. Well, the year that I did that, I possibly felt as bad as I ever have because I was overworked. I was running myself into the ground. I had lost myself completely.
Mhm.
I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do. My energy was very frantic. That's not good for me. I was under a tremendous amount of stress. Tremendous amount of stress. And I stayed sick a whole lot. And I took a step back and I thought, this isn't success. And the first time that I didn't have to beat to the drum of an alarm clock and I owned my own time, I realized that to me, that's my number one indicator of success. If I am doing what I love to do and I'm owning my own time, everything else is going to fall into place.
Yeah.
Because I'm that person that I can't, and I know some people enjoy micromanagement. Some people need somebody else to provide that structure. I am not that person. And I figured that out about myself when I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
And the last employer, all I wanted was autonomy. All I wanted was to set my own hours. You don't have to watch me. You don't have to check up on me. I don't need to be micromanaged. That is just, I will do what I'm supposed to do and more.
Yeah.
But they did not trust me for whatever reason and wouldn't give me what I wanted. And I freaking left. And they never thought that I would leave. And that was a huge moment for me. And I thought, I'm never going back to this world. I'm never going back. I will I will build my own business and I'll make it work. If it kills me, because it's going to kill me staying in a W-2 position, punching a time clock. I can't do this. And I think that's why a lot of women tell me that they're unhappy in their work because they're doing something they're not supposed to do and they're not doing what they really love to do, but they're defining success by a paycheck.
Yeah.
And that is not the healthiest way in the world to look at it because the money will come. The money comes when you're in the right place at the right time, doing what you love to do, the money is going to come. And I just had to say that because that was like a pivotal moment in my world when I figured out what I really wanted. And it was freedom. It was just, I love to work. It's like my favorite thing to do. One of my favorite things to do. But I want to be able to do it on my time.
Yeah.
And if I could do it on my time, good to go.
So I spent 10 years working at a dealership that was not owned by my family. I spent 10 years in Nashville. And that first time I hit that six-figure income, I was very young. I was very young, and I was very blessed to have the job that I had. I talked my way into it. But I looked around me, and I don't think there's anything wrong with hard working, but you talk about working long hours and being sick all the time.
Oh, God.
I just graduated college not too long before, and I look around and I've got friends that are, in graduate programs. I've got friends that are just kind of living their best life out there, having fun still in their early 20s, right? Mid 20s. And I find myself working like 80-hour work weeks. And that's kind of who I am. I mean, I don't sit idle easily. But it did. I mean, you talk about getting you sick and getting you. By the time I was done working there, I was very burnout. I was I was working a lot of hours constantly. We had gotten to a point where we were open 7 days a week. So there were times we flexed our schedules and I had a lot of control over. I did get to a point where I had a lot of control over when I was going to work, but the hours were long. No matter what, the hours were long. And sometimes it was 12 days in a row just that you could take a 5-day vacation, right? And 5 days was a vacation.
Right, right.
So yeah, getting to the point where you do get to set your own schedule and you do get to, I love the flexibility of going from place to place. So it's, I oversee 7 operations at this point. And having that flexibility in my day that, okay, if this is happening here, I can go there. I do need movement. I can't sit in one place. And in that job where I sat in one office, one place all day long. And it was, it steals your soul, right?
It does.
It was stealing my soul. So
If you're
having a
not
chance to-
meant for that.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, I try to push work-life balance in my business. I try really hard to consider the employee experience as opposed to the grind, right? Because I grew up in a car business that was very much a urban grind. And we were open late and we were open 7 days a week and it was hard. It was a harder business than I think it has to be. So I try to make it kinder.
Thank God for that because I've had supervisors in the past who treated everybody the same and failed to look at the human component.
Everybody's different. No 2 people will be motivated the same.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And there's one thing I know that I don't like to do, and that is manage people.
Yeah.
I don't like to manage people. I don't ever want to manage anybody. If I have to manage anybody, we don't need to be working together. Before I started this career with the self-help business, of course, I was in the grant writing and the fundraising, and I was managing. I don't remember how many. I don't remember how many people I was managing there at the end, but it was too many. And it turned into me not being able to do what I really love to do for managing people.
Yeah.
But
Hardest thing we do is people.
because I wouldn't manage them. It's like I tried to give everybody what they needed. I tried to pay attention to who needed what, because some people um, need to be motivated intrinsically. Some people needed to be motivated extrinsically, and I tried to do that. But that is not ever something that I ever want to do is manage people. But anytime that I did, I tried to take that human component into consideration, and I think it's awesome that you do that because you manage a lot of people, right?
We have a lot of employees. As far as direct reports, I think I managed more people directly when I was actually the general manager of a store. So yes, I absolutely manage people. At leadership position, we have a lot of leaders and we have a lot of tiers in that leadership. I think that what I get to do now instead of managing people is lead people. What I get to do now is I get to hopefully inspire vision. I get to maybe give some direction, but really be more of that mentor coach. Ask the good questions. I I have done a lot of managing of people, and I kind of like it actually. I
I
love
like to
people.
lead people.
Yeah.
I don't like to manage people. Like I don't want to have to tell somebody what to do or check up behind them.
Yeah, I don't like doing that either.
I like to train people
Mhm. I think
and
you give people the idea,
mhm.
you give them the tools, you give them the motivation, and then I like to step back and let people do what they're gonna do. I don't wanna tell you how I want something done, I wanna tell you I want it done. You if you have a different game plan, if you want me to help, I'll help. If you need guidance, I'll give guidance, but I don't wanna step in anybody's way for doing something creative that might be an outside of the box way that I wouldn't have thought of.
Right. Right. So are you supervising more people now than you ever have?
I'm leading more people now than I ever have.
Mhm.
I suppose so.
Is it
Yeah.
more men than women?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a female who maybe aspires, maybe she is at a subordinate level and she wants to get, promoted. She wants to move up the hierarchy, and that would entail her supervising or leading more people than she ever has. So let's just say, what would you tell her to do?
I'm gonna tell you what I did tell somebody to do.
Okay, perfect.
Sitting here
I knew
smiling.
I was going somewhere with that question.
I have when I was the general manager of our Hyundai store, I had this employee and she wanted to rise into leadership. She'd ask me how she does it and she was going to school and she always brought me the problems. She always brought me, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I was having a moment, she was having a moment. She comes in my office and I said, I need you to stop bringing me problems and start bringing me solutions.
Mhm.
I did not know what spark I was gonna create in that moment, honestly. It was a moment where I was just like, I don't have the capacity in this moment. You can't keep bringing me the problems." And I did. I said to her flat out, "Stop bringing me the problems, start bringing me the solutions."
Mhm.
It changed. I mean, seismic I almost have chills because it was a seismic change in the way that she showed up to work. It was a seismic change in the way that she interacted, in the way that she did. She started bringing me, "Hey, I think we could do this." I'm like, "Run with it," right?
Mhm.
And, the growth that I've seen in just this individual, and there are lots of stories, right? There are lots of stories like that, but I think that the overarching thing is bring the solution. Don't bring the problem. If you wanna grow, then we call it dig your job, right? Bring the solution, bring how you wanna do it, and if you bring that to the table as opposed to the complaint, then all of a sudden you bring value. You've just brought value as opposed to bringing negativity. Bring me something positive. Okay, we have a problem. You see an opportunity. How would you address it? And if you bring it to me in that package, I'm way more likely to be excited about it than you bringing me a problem.
Right.
So the second piece of that is advocating for yourself. The other thing she did in that communication is I always knew, like, I want to grow into leadership, and I know her goals. I know her heart. I know what she's looking for. So advocate for yourself, because if your leadership team sees you bringing solutions and knows what you want, you're on their radar.
That's right. That's very true, and something I just remembered from the past, because I had a supervisor once that you did not want to bring a problem, really, or a solution to this person, because they could not let go of anything. And I think that that's probably a person that doesn't really need to be in charge.
Yeah.
I mean, this person, it had to be them identifying the problem and the solution. And then once they got that whole thing worked out, then it was delegate, 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 when none of the subordinates were involved in any of the decision making to get to where they were.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's tough. And that's another environment that it actually created a pretty toxic work environment. And there's nothing worse than a toxic work environment.
Absolutely.
It's awful. Isn't it awful?
Yeah. Culture's everything.
It is.
Culture's everything. And you can feel it. Even if it's a business and you have a consumer, they can feel it when they walk in the
They
door.
can feel it.
They can feel it. I mean, because people perceive energy. So
Mhm.
if you have bad energy in your place of work, then and you can't affect the change, you almost have to find the place where you have the energy, right? If you find yourself in a place where you have negative energy all the time, you won't find your success there.
Mhm.
If you can create that, if you can be that culture driver, be that culture driver. But if you don't, yeah, a toxic workplace is a dangerous workplace.
It's dangerous, and it trickles down to impact, again, every aspect of your life, because I mean, I'm no longer a waiting for the weekend person, because what I do is 24/7, and I live and breathe it, and I love it. And so it just goes on all the time in one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I used to live for the weekend, and it was when I was in one of those W-2 positions that just put my light out, like you were talking about earlier. And I would spend the whole weekend dreading Monday. And I would get some relief on Friday. Saturday, I'd be all right. Sunday, that anxiety would start building. I'd start dreading Monday.
Yeah.
By the time I got in there on Monday, I had already decided how awful it was going to be. And it was. It
Yeah.
was. I couldn't get control of myself, my thoughts, my emotions when I was in a toxic workplace. And that's something that I hope that people are aware of. If they're in a toxic workplace, they have got to get the fuck out. That's all that there is to it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And because I know you personally, and I know what your energy is like, and I know who you are and what you stand for, I know that the culture that you are really cultivating has got to be uplifting in every way, because I know what you believe in. And you know that people have to be motivated, and they got to feel good in order to do a great job.
My true hope, my true hope. And nobody's perfect. My business isn't perfect. I can't tell you that every one of my employees is, the happiest they can be. And what I hope our employees know is that we have every one of them. We have their heart at mind. What I hope they can see is my heart, because truly, yeah. Do we have a profit margin and a bottom line, and do we look at financials? Absolutely, we do. We have
Sure.
quarterly business conference tomorrow, and yeah, we got to look at the numbers. But but again, it's impact. It's the people. So we put out a survey every year with the Kentucky what is it, Chamber of Commerce, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, for best places to work.
Mhm.
And we pay a lot of attention to it. I was just looking at reports yesterday, and we get the chance to get feedback that is unbiased, and it's blind, so we can't tell who's giving the feedback. And we really do make changes as an executive team based off of the feedback from our employees, because they're not always going to give it to you face to face.
That's right.
So are they all happy? No, I can tell you there are plenty of areas where I have employees that are not happy, but we're paying attention, right?
Sure.
And I don't think every employer pays attention.
They
So yeah, I hope everyone knows my heart, and that Yeah, we got to have a bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're a business. Yeah, we have to operate, but we're there to take care of our customers. We're there to take care of each other. We're there to take care of our employees. And when you take care of those things, the rest takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. And that's across all sectors. It's not, and I think the corporate world gets the most blame for that, maybe not paying attention to the needs of their employees are, and job satisfaction and employee motivation and retention and all of that. But it's across all sectors. I've worked in all sectors.
Yeah.
And it is just as common in the nonprofit sector as it is the private sector. And it depends on the employer. And it's just like it goes back to culture. It's just the culture of that business or organization that really determines a lot,
Absolutely.
a whole lot.
And it starts at the top. Culture starts at the top.
Mm-hmm.
It is top down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people a lot of employees, they really are afraid to speak up because they think it's going to backfire.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about your employee that came into your office with problems, that kind of reminded me a little bit of how I was back in the day. And a lot of the reason that I was like that was because I had been in positions where I didn't have any type of decision-making power. I didn't have any autonomy, and I didn't think that I feel like I was overstepping a boundary if I offered up a solution.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And that is, so we kind of hit on that earlier. That is where my style is to empower people
Yeah.
because I don't have the capacity to make every decision. I don't want to make every decision. I
No.
want to be the person maybe pushing the levers and guiding and coaching and mentoring and counseling, but to make every decision is exhausting. And there are some people out there who just micromanage. They're gonna make I can't. So I really do. Like if I'm gonna lead you, I do need don't get me wrong. If the house is on fire, I need to know the house is on fire, right? But like
Right.
maybe tell me where the fire hydrant is. Like
Right. Right.
so
And I think that coming from someone like you, because your title now it's COO
hmm
and Susan is
CEO.
CEO. Okay. So those are some big titles, big responsibility. And people are, they're looking up to you. And when you're in a position like that, people do model your behaviors. They pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that the best thing that you can do for somebody who has a lot of ambition and a lot of motivation is to build them up and teach them how to get to where you are, because that just makes everybody stronger. It makes your job easier.
A true leader is always identifying their replacement, training, mentoring,
Yeah.
counseling, because I don't think I'm at the top of my potential, right? So
Sure.
true leader, doesn't matter what level you're at, is
Mhm.
always mentoring, counseling, and looking to replace themselves. What am I on to next? You know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm going anywhere, but there are ways that we could grow and we could continue to grow. And I might need somebody in this position so I can be doing something more.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely. We should all be growing all the time. I don't think if you are not in a growth mindset, if you are not willing to adapt and change and move and continue to grow, then you're dying.
On that note, let's think of 5 or 6 things that we could tell women, areas to work on with what the time that we've got left. Areas to work on that if they want to go to the top, will get them there. And you just said something that sparked a thought. It's getting out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to get out of your
You
comfort
got to
zone.
get out of your comfort zone. Here's the other thing that I was thinking about earlier and I haven't verbalized yet. In those instances where you know you're going to or you have imposter syndrome, step outside yourself. Get a little self-aware as opposed to living in your fear and your anxiety. Step outside and look at the room, read the room. What is my strength? There is a reason I'm here. What is my strength that nobody else has? And that's what I'm going to offer. And I've had to do that. So get uncomfortable and step outside yourself and really, from the outside looking in, say, okay, these are the players. This is my situation. This is my strength. Use it. Because there's a reason, like you said. You've been in rooms where it's like, who am I in this room?
Right.
There's a reason. You can think differently than they can.
Mm-hmm.
What's my purpose? Step outside yourself and find it. Don't get lost in your anxiety.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. So we've got get out of your comfort zone. We've got self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be
I think that's perfect.
self-reflection.
Advocate.
Advocate for yourself. And emotional intelligence kind of I think it's just overarching. And I think, well, I know, um, emotional intelligence, when you can manage your emotions and your thoughts in a healthy way, in a way that serves you versus versus doesn't serve you, then you can sit at any table in any room. You can rule the world.
Yeah. The other one, the last one, don't be afraid to ask.
That's a good one.
Don't be afraid to ask. Ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing stupid about a question.
That's right.
If you don't know something, it's an opportunity to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're afraid to ask because you don't know it, that's when you start making mistakes in the workplace that you don't know are mistakes. That's when people get frustrated because they say this person doesn't know how to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Right. Yeah, you're definitely right about that. And I'll add one more thing, and this comes from a podcast episode that I did a couple of days ago with Dr. Amber Wardell, and she is a social media influencer, and just came out with a self-care book, and I really like it. She talked about how um, women expect men to read their minds. And there's actually a psychological term for that, and I
Yeah.
cannot think of what it was, and my notes are gone from that interview. But I have been guilty of that in all of my relationships, platonic, intimate, professional. I will expect a man to automatically know what I want or what I'm thinking, and they cannot do that.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We don't think the same way.
We don't think the same way. And this goes back to what we were saying when I think the cameras were rolling. Women have got to express, communicate effectively with men in the workplace. And that goes back to, if you've got a question, ask it. Be assertive. You can be assertive and not be a bitch. It's like women just get, because women, dumb themselves down and get timid. Then when they step up and they're direct, people are, oh, well, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's because we've learned, any woman that does that, they have learned that that's how they have to communicate to get what they want
Mm-hmm.
or to get their questions answered.
There's also a way to be assertive without being overly aggressive.
Right.
Right? And that comes the emotional intelligence, right? And that, oh God, we could have 3 more podcasts on some of this stuff.
We could.
But the emotional intelligence and communication styles, right? Understand who you're communicating with. Just like no two people are motivated the same way, no two people communicate and process information the same way. So we get really big into personality indexing in our stores. We've been using PI for over 20 years. And I know I can read these charts, like I can glance at it and understand how I might communicate and you might communicate, and you're going to take a piece of information and process it in a different way than I will. And I know because you think this way and I think this way, this is how I should approach it. And we try to coach and counsel that with our management and leadership team too, and our HR department. Like when we have conflicts, internal conflicts, right down to personality. So you can advocate for yourself, you can be assertive, but if you can do those things, understanding the person that you're talking to and have that insight that you need to approach them in a very specific way that is approachable to them,
Mm-hmm.
that's powerful.
That's a game changer.
Mhm.
It's just like the differences between introverts and extroverts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you know that somebody is an introvert, you're going to communicate a whole lot differently. If you, instead of just going in and and assuming something, or that's huge.
For example,
That's
if I've got
huge.
an introvert and I pop into their office and say, hey, can we sit down and talk about these things real quick? It's going to drive them crazy because they needed time to prepare, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
An extrovert, yeah, let's pop in, let's talk about it.
right.
Introvert needs that time. Let me be prepared,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, everybody is different in the way they prefer to communicate and work. And if we can learn those things about each other, then it just becomes a much more effective environment.
It does, and it goes back to taking the human component into consideration. And with you being at the top of the hierarchy in your business, and the fact that you do that, I guarantee that you are very, very appreciated by your people.
I hope.
No doubt about that. I mean, because people can sense it, they can spot it. They know when somebody cares and when somebody doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's like you said before, it's not perfect, never going to be perfect. And personally, I think perfect would be pretty boring.
Yeah.
But people can sense it. They sense authenticity. Even if mistakes are made, they sense authenticity and they appreciate it and they love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that we have a lot of good stuff
Yeah.
has come out.
I think the very last thing,
Mm-hmm.
very last thing is have vision. Because we talked about this before we started. Know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Have that vision. And it's January. It's perfect time to do this for the year.
Yep.
We did vision boards. I had all of my teams do vision boards. And we're
Did
presenting
you
tomorrow.
really? Oh, I've got cold chills.
And so last year I gave them all glittery poster boards and we all did them on the same boards. This year I said, just go with it. Do what you do. But have vision. So have your own personal vision. Because if you know what you want, it's easier to advocate. It's easier to be assertive. It's easier to have the solutions. It gives you focus. And all these 5 things that we talked about, it all starts with the vision. What do I want? What do I see? What do I want? And when I know that, when I'm clear with that in my mind's eye, the rest of it falls into place.
That's exactly right. So did you do vision boards like during regular work hours?
So it was a project. And yeah, the teams got together and did them together.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we have a quarterly leadership conference. And
vision boards are powerful.
Yeah. So this year, we'll go over last year's. Last year's the first year we did it. So we'll go over all of those boards, see what happened, and see how much of it came true. And then we'll do this year's.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So I think that we can sum it up as we just gave everybody a lot of really great insight and advice, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
We did.
Did we give impact?
We did.
The Thought Snob Podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob Podcast with Paula Swope.